Good afternoon, everybody. It's a new year, and I'd like to do something a little bit different this time around. I usually talk to current or former or prospective or online students. That's who my video casts are directed toward, and podcasts and other bits of content. But I'm giving advice today to new teachers. And people may wonder why I would be giving advice to new teachers, or where do I come across giving new advice to new teachers. But I've been teaching high school English now for 20 years. In September of 1997, I started teaching high school English. Actually, in 1996, I was a teacher assistant in a science classroom for a year. And then in 1995, I had what they called at University of Iowa a practicum, which is really student teaching. And that was 1995. So 22 years, 20 of them in front of the room, in control. And there's that word again, right? Control of a class. I like to see it as guiding or management, not necessarily control. But so when you talk about credibility in today's world, everyone's like, well, who are you? Why are you going to do it? What everyone's all hating on everybody else. Well, after 20 years, I have some insight, I believe, and I think it makes sense. And also, if I were a 20-year basketball coach with a record of success, no one would even think to say, who are you to do this? Why are you do this? So you see that kind of thing in today's internet, online troll, Reddit, Twitter, social media, Instagram, Facebook, foolishness bit of society that we exist in. All the hater troll types do their thing, and they're pretty easy to swat away. But those of you with credibility, you just hit them over the head with your credibility, right? Use your credibility flamethrower and ask what they were doing 20 years ago. And you'll find the answers will be limited. So what I want to tell new teachers, and I even have a list here of things that I want to talk about quickly, is the first thing I want you to think about is, why are you there? If you're there to have summers off, if you're there to make money, if you're there to get a permanent job, if you're there to have your day end at 3 o'clock, even if all of those things are kind of true or very much true, because my day ends at 2:49, I can walk out the door if I wish at 2:49 p.m. every day. But if that's your motivation, it's going to be more difficult for you as an instructor, right? Your motivation should be a little bit more humane. Your motivation should be, you thought you'd be good at teaching, you want to impart knowledge, you want to see young people take an intellectual journey. And I'm really focusing more on grades 7 through 12. New York State has said I'm qualified to teach high schoolers and middle schoolers. 7 through 12 is my license. New York State says I'm qualified, and you can insert whatever joke you want in them right there, right? But that I'm qualified to teach grades 7 through 12 in the public high schools in English. So what you want to do is, and that's where, so my advice is going to sound like that of a high school and middle school teacher. So I talk about intellectual curiosity. While that may relate directly with younger students, it relates as well with 12-year-olds and older. So if you're there to foster intellectual curiosity, and you're there to deal with uncomfortable topics and questions and guide young people through that because you feel you have the credibility and you feel you have the capability, then you're doing the right thing. The other more superficial reasons aren't really that great. You're not going to want to have a career doing that, because it brings me to my second point. You're going to be challenged. And you're going to be challenged in unexpected ways. And depending upon the kind of school you're in is really where that's coming from. So we had a few incidents, and the teacher is still there, to her credit. She's a science teacher, and she I think works with some of our special needs students, and they call her all kinds of names. And the nicest one they called her for a long time was a white bitch. Now that's not okay. And this woman's demeanor at the beginning was excited and happy to be teaching and wanting to go and do what she's doing. And then the past couple of years, her demeanor and body language has been pretty bad, pretty low, pretty unhappy, you could tell. And you get called that enough times, it's going to be affecting to anybody. But lately, there seems to be a change, and I don't know what that is. All right, I need to talk with this person. I'm curious, because you can only be called that so many times before you give up and you just phone it in, and you show up in the morning, you hand out some copies or risographs, as we used to say, and you leave at 3 o'clock, and you just don't give a rat's ass anymore, and she doesn't seem to do that. So I'm going to have to see what's up with that, because if you're going to be challenged, and that's just one way. There could be other ways. There could be different ways that you get challenged, right? In terms of teenage behavior or aloofness or hardcore sarcasm from young people. You have to be prepared for challenges in ways that you can't predict. No two ways about it. That brings me to point 3. You have to present your best self. You as a person who's a reader, intellectually curious, and you really should be a reader. I don't get how you're going to go and be a teacher in any school or online school, anywhere, and not be a reader. I mean, at the very least, it has to be in your specialty. Oh, well, I like heating and air conditioning. I'm a vocational teacher at the local BOCES, and I teach heating and air conditioning. I don't really read anything. Really? I don't. How's that possible? You have to read about temperature and air pressure. You have to read about regulations at the very least. You have to read about the various types of Freon that are usable and not. None of that makes any sense. It never makes any sense for a teacher to not be a reader, in my opinion. I just don't get that. So you have to present your best self in an academic area to young people. They will know if you are, quote unquote, phoning it in. If you're half-assing it, they're going to know. They might, even in a school like mine, which has a not the greatest reputation, let's say, those students will be polite oftentimes and not say it, but they'll tell their friends and their other teachers, Marola in English, he's a hack, he's not doing it right. We don't do anything in there. We don't learn, and that you'll hear that. Say, well, that person doesn't teach anything. We don't learn anything. That's a common one. I hear that more than that person's a jerk. Or that teacher doesn't understand, right? I hear more complaints about that person doesn't teach and we don't learn anything. I hear that more than any other criticism. That's an honest truth. So your job is to present the best version of you to young people. Point 4, you need to be able and be ready to tell the truth. What I mean by that is, if you're going to be politically correct, let's go back to the first point. Why are you there? Students can open up any corporate mainstream news outlet or any major publisher textbook and get the views that you have. I'll say that again. And I talked about this with that Lincoln podcast, video cast from before, right? I have friends, mainly from high school and college, who always push back on stuff I put out there with regards to Lincoln and race and civil rights and slavery and history and things like that. And they give me the established opinion. That's what they hand to me. No student in the United States needs you to tell them what's in the textbook. So you're going to need to be ready to tell the truth. And just as kind of a strange example, but with my older students, I asked, I don't know how this came up. I think it's a presentational speaking class, and I think the gender pay gap was the topic that came up. And somehow the conversation wound its way to Candace Parker, who's a spectacular women's basketball player, and the reason why she wasn't in the NBA. And because they brought up, I brought up professions that are predominantly men that are dangerous, that pay high. They pay very well, and that contributes to this pay gap or alleged pay gap. And I brought up the example of sports, like why aren't how come you don't have these women starring in the NBA? They certainly would make more than whatever the WNBA is paying. And I got all kinds of weird answers about Candace Parker. She doesn't try out for the NBA because she feels that she would be discriminated against if she were the only woman. One girl started to explain how maybe she's afraid, and I jumped right over. I said, what do you mean she's afraid? She's nervous and afraid? Is she a weak woman? Now, I was pushing, of course, but women and men are not made the same. And if you think they're identical, you need to go to your local college or community college and get them to eliminate the biology department. Don't rag on me about it. I'm not telling you that men and women are different. I'm telling you what biology has told me, and in class and in the world, for my 45 years. Don't get angry about me. Right? I'm not saying this. This is biology. So I told them, I said, well, that's not very politically correct. Right? Men and women are the same. And everything a man can do, a woman can do. Everything. And then when I said the NBA, why isn't Candace Parker playing in the NBA? You should have heard the anger and the emotion. No arguments. It was suppositions about how Candace Parker may or may not feel. But I'm not like, yeah, okay, right. Well, maybe Candace Parker can play in the NBA. It's just some kind of odd bias that the NBA keeps women out, right? They're just discriminatory against females, which is ludicrous. But you have to be ready to tell the truth. And in some ways, I would say 85% of those instances, it means having unpopular and or politically incorrect opinions. You have to be ready for that. And you should do that, in my opinion. A big one, and maybe the last one, because I don't want this to go more than 15 minutes, is you should respect your students' intellect, particularly those who are well-read and or intellectually curious. And I took that from Thaddeus Russell, a guy who wrote the Renegade History of the United States. And he said in a podcast that he was in a class and he had a professor who took his ideas seriously. And that really hit hard to me because I never thought of it this way, but people ask me why I have reasonable success. I'm reasonably well liked at where I work. I have quantifiable and qualifiable success in the sense that socially I'm successful. I don't have a lot of social problems or people barking at me and stuff like that. And I also have quantifiable success in terms of scores and the Regents exams and stuff like that. That kind of thing in the long run I think is meaningless. I hate the testing game. But I have overall success, and people ask me why. Because I've been in difficult schools. Monroe High School in Soundview, right by the Sheridan Expressway and the Cross Bronx Expressway by Soundview Projects. That was a tough place to work. But I did well. Where I am now, Mount Vernon High School, is, again, it can be a difficult place to work. But I have success. And when Russell said he had a professor who took his ideas seriously, I realized that, and I'm trying not to sound egomaniacal here, but that's what I do, just instinctively. Someone has an idea or a question or a counterpoint, and I take it seriously. Like, it wouldn't occur to me to not take it seriously. It wouldn't occur to me to out of the gate be sarcastic. It just doesn't sit well with me. I don't know why. That's just how I go about it. And maybe it's positive reinforcement. More positive reactions and more positive feedback from doing that over 20 years has probably caused me to do that more than anything else. So if you're willing to, and this really I think this goes to any age group, to all of you new teachers, probably nursery school to the end of high school or college level. If you take your students' ideas seriously, you take their intellect seriously, questions, comments, you'll go far. And that means that even as something saying you don't know, I probably tell a student I don't know about that, I can't speak intelligently on that, at least once a day. At least once a day. And I'm not shy about getting my opinions out there. I'm not shy. Most people want educators today in high school and college to indoctrinate students in the regressive left, to use a Dave Rubin phrase, right? This kind of liberal, politically correct, social justice warrior nonsense that's out there. Now, I'm not going to do that, right? That's just not going to happen, right? Everything is couched in race and political correctness and what have you. No, I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to present it the best way I can, and I'm going to be as intellectually honest with those students as I can. And that respect goes to them too. So that reciprocity goes a long way, and I recommend it highly. That's about all I got for today. If you're a new teacher, best of luck. Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. TheFreelanceTeacher.com and my YouTube channel right here. Take care. Have a great year.